Spring 2018 sucked. There were maybe 3 exceptions, but who cares about good shows? I'm gonna talk about 2 that I couldn't stand, but weren't worth discussing in depth. I'm also working on 2 more regular videos, so if you really want to hear about how bad Gun Arm Boys or Vampire Devils are, then those are coming soon. Doreiku is a show about people gambling while wearing these retainers. When 2 people with the retainers gamble, the loser of the game becomes the winner's slave. It starts out with a character cheating by using a loophole to win, and that's how almost every game is resolved for the rest of the show. This is the main character, and that's her entire personality. She goes along with the main guy and doesn't do a single thing until episode 4. She also has no reason to use the retainer. The show starts with this guy convincing her to work as his backup while he uses one, but all she says when she agrees is that she sees where he's coming from. Later on, she says that in the beginning she wanted to use it for her own personal gain, but now she's changed her mind after seeing what it's done to people. We never saw her want to use it though. Then, after he betrays her, she decides that she's going to take everyone as a slave so that she can release them. So just like any other generic shonen MC, her only motivation is to save everyone. Main Boy's motivation is even worse. He says that he doesn't care about having slaves, and he just wants to test the limits of his abilities. You know it's bad when you use a line straight from Naruto. Surprise though, the temptation of having slaves is too much for him and he goes crazy. I'm going to show you all the non-boring bets people make, so you have absolutely no reason to try and watch this show. These 2 play pachinko, and whoever has the most balls at the end of 3 hours wins. But uh-oh, she's been playing all day and the balls she earned earlier in the day count. This girl says if you let go of my hand then you lose. He says okay, and then lets go of her hand. She didn't have the retainer in at the time when they started the game, but apparently that doesn't matter. Big Man here beats the shit out of a hostess and makes her agree to a punch-out, immediately making her his slave. Alright, are you ready for this one? A dog growls at Big Man, and Big Man says bring it. Too bad for him, the dog has a retainer, and when the dog bites his big balls, he becomes the dog's slave. Even dumber is that the dog turns out to be the main girl's dog. Main guy goes insane and decides to make the dog his slave, basically keeping him hostage so that the main girl will have to do whatever he wants without her actually being his slave. To do this, he makes the dog and this girl compete to see who can eat more of a plate and fork. Main girl doesn't want her dog to die, so she forfeits for him. This kid makes this guy think that they're on a team in a trivia game, so guy lets the kid answer for them. But then they weren't on a team, so kid beats him. The next game is a game of capture the flag, but they added bear traps and tripwires to make it cool. This guy shows up and reveals his special retainer that makes you his slave as soon as he snaps. That's fair, right? It doesn't ruin any of the tension that comes from people betting their lives. Main girl bets this guy that she can earn more money than him in 2 hours, and she wins by burning his money. Main girl bets the main villain that whoever begs for their life first loses. Then she blows up the building everyone's in, so he gives up. The final bet is a coin toss to see who gets to set everyone free, and main girl wins. She releases everyone and they all get a happy ending. Wow, I am really glad we set this psychopath, rapist, guy who is trying to sell everyone into human trafficking, and these yakuza free. Due to all of the cheating and loopholes, rather than being on the edge of my seat thinking about who has the upper hand and worrying that a character I like could lose everything, I'm just looking for what twist is going to happen. Not to mention that main girl only gambles 3 times in the whole show. The only time I ever wondered how someone was going to win like the show wanted was with the guy who just has to snap. They even set up that he wouldn't be able to use his power on main girl, but they just have a new character pull his teeth out until he submits. I was somewhat surprised by how little sexual stuff there was in this show. Sure, a lot of girls are dressed like sluts, but most of them dress like that on their own. Only 2 characters actually made their slaves have sex with them. A girl used this guy as a naked chair, but that was more about shaming him for raping her, which he did before they even had their retainers. This kid strips this girl, but he was using her to replace his lost mom, so that was weird. Almost every single character had a flashback scene, including the dog. During the dog's backstory, we learned that the retainer was originally made as a pet training device, which doesn't really explain why the inventor named it the slave control method. After someone steals the retainer prototype, the inventor kills himself and the dog walks in on his corpse. There's also this amazing establishing shot for when they're in the lab that's clearly just a photograph with a filter over it. This boy has his mom's mind living inside of him for no reason. They never really explain how or why it happened. She eventually says that when he lost the game to the kid, she just awoke in his head. This whole show is stupid. Magical Girl Side is the newest attempt to shake up the Mahou Shoujo genre, and it is terrible. It's a huge edgefest where the girls don't even have anything that they're supposed to fight. They just start fighting each other because the gods who gave them their powers want them to be miserable. They all bleed out of various places when they use their powers and die if they use them too much. From the second episode, we learn that there's some horrible event called the Tempest coming, and the girls need to be ready for it. Then after a while, we learn that it's just the apocalypse. Wow, there sure was a lot of mystery in that. I am glad the story was treating it like something that would surprise the viewer. At one point in the story, the writer decided that he gave up on trying to hide that he made a Madoka ripoff, and made his main character say that she's going to protect everyone else by taking all of their pain for herself. The other girls tell her no though, because then there wouldn't be any more main characters to die in the story. Every girl has a tragic backstory because that's what causes the gods to turn them into magical girls. Main girl is being bullied in the most generic way possible for Japan. Where do these girls even get this many razor blades? Wouldn't 10 be enough? Her brother also beats her up at night and calls her his punching bag. Main girl number 2 had her family murdered, which leads to one of the dumbest scenes in the entire show. She found her parents' murderer and uses her time-stopping powers to tie him up in her apartment and tortures him all the time. Her entire living room is just her torture victim and a chair to watch him from. What does she do when the landlord comes over? It's just so stupid. Then when he dies, she feels that she's lost her only reason to live. If that wasn't enough, they're also being attacked by the bully with her yo-yo in a scene straight from Yu-Gi-Oh! Bully Girl's backstory is that she got her throat cut after trying to cut Main Girl up. Also, the only reason she hates Main Girl is because Main Girl doesn't say thank you. That's all the backstories worth talking about, but I still need to tell you about my favorite character. This is the edgiest character in the whole show. She dresses like a chuuni and her magical stick is a box cutter. When she cuts herself with it and feeds her blood to someone, it heals them. While explaining her power, she says, "Luckily I was already practicing self-harm," and whenever the author needs some comedy relief, she sits in the corner repeating, "I want to cut." This character is so ridiculous that I really want to believe that this story is satire. It's the author's second edgy magical girl story though, so I doubt it. The plot is nothing special. The magical girls all work together to get ready for the apocalypse, fight Main Girl's brother, then decide they need to fight the gods who gave them their powers. They kill a couple and the story ends. There's still the generic table of villains though, so we know that it's not truly a happy ending. The main villain for most of the show is the main girl's brother. Before she gets her powers, he beats her because his parents put too much stress on him. At one point he practically says, "I hate you, Dad. You don't deserve to live." When he finds out that magical girls exist, he takes the panties of an idol girl that makes people do whatever you tell them to. Once the girls try to stop him, this girl who can run super fast is too dumb to take the panties off of him before he can take control of her. He also apparently has the power to teleport, even though it's never mentioned. He tells Fast Girl to kill this Trap, so she runs super fast over to him. Then she runs Trap over to the other girls. Evil Brother is somehow able to show up only a minute later than her and this girl that can fly at super speeds. Well, I guess Speedy's not actually that fast because she's only twice as fast as this normal girl over here. Idol Girl ends up killing him, and after the credits of the last episode, we see that he wasn't really dead. Or is dead, but is now working with the gods. I'm not sure and I don't really care. When Idol killed Evil Brother, the Idol Girl also died. They have a funeral for her and all of the main characters act sad, but they weren't even close. Her and Pink Hair wanted to kill each other the entire show. Then they had to take her panties away from her because they didn't trust her. Then she worked together with Evil Brother to try and kill them. Sure, they had a mandatory beach episode together, and she saved them in the end, but if the other girls weren't so stupid, they could have taken him by themselves. There's this one girl that barely exists in the show, and they established that her power is that whatever she cuts with her blade gets frozen. But we only ever see it do that when they introduce her. It doesn't do it here. Or here. Then there's this rich girl who has a stupid perverted butler, and that just reminds me of how much I hated To Be Hero. The outro is probably worth mentioning. It's a live-action video of some girls dancing around while sperm flies all around. I know why they have the sperm, but it's really not worth explaining. Oh, and for one episode it was a live-action performance of the fictional idol group dancing. This show has some of the most static, boring animation of the season, with two exceptions. A scene from the beginning when main girl is being bullied, and the bathing scene. Then we get plenty of frames. I guess that makes these the two scenes that they really wanted us to pay attention to. You'd think that it'd be a time when someone dies, but no. Those look like every other part of the show. When I started doing research for this show, I read a review comparing this show to Magical Girl Apocalypse, and I thought, why would someone use that as a basis for a Magical Girl story? This is apparently a spin-off of that story. That's already not a good manga, but I would rather read that 5 times than sit through this garbage again. Making these videos tends to purge me of most memories of whatever show I'm talking about, and I really hope that's the case with this one.